Hello, and welcome to our comprehensive guide on creating and maintaining a beautiful garden right here in the United States. Whether you're working with a sprawling backyard in the Midwest, a sunny patio in California, or a small urban plot in the Northeast, the principles of good gardening start long before you ever plant a seed. I'm your guide, and over the next several chapters, we'll walk through everything you need to know to cultivate a space that you can be proud of. In this first chapter, we're going to focus on the single most important and often overlooked aspect of gardening: understanding your specific environment. Think of yourself as a detective. Before you can build a thriving community of plants, you need to investigate the scene. Your garden is a unique ecosystem with its own set of rules, and learning those rules is the key to success. We'll cover 4 fundamental areas: mapping your sunlight, understanding your climate zone and microclimates, assessing your soil, and observing your local water patterns. So grab a notebook, and let's get started. Our first mission is to become sun mapping experts. Sunlight is the fuel for nearly all plant life, but not all light is created equal. Some plants, like tomatoes and lavender, crave 8 or more hours of direct, intense sun. Others, like hostas and ferns, will scorch and wither in those same conditions, preferring the gentle, dappled light of a shady corner. Simply guessing where the sun falls in your yard isn't enough. You need to map it. Here's a simple way to do this. Pick a relatively clear day and make a simple sketch of your gardening area. It doesn't have to be a work of art. Just outline the house, any large trees, fences, or other structures. Then throughout the day, go outside and observe. Start around 9 in the morning. Note which areas are in full, direct sun and which are in shade. Use a pencil to lightly shade the areas that are dark. Go out again around noon, when the sun is at its highest point. This will show you the most intense sun exposure of the day. Mark these areas on your map. Finally, go out one more time around 3 or 4 in the afternoon to see how the light has shifted. After just one day of observation, you'll have a surprisingly detailed sun map. You'll clearly see the spots that get full sun, meaning 6 to 8 or more hours of direct light. You'll identify the part sun or part shade areas, which typically receive about 4 to 6 hours. And you'll find the full shade locations, which get less than 4 hours of direct sun, and often only indirect, reflected light. This map is now your blueprint for plant selection. When you see a plant tag at the nursery that says full sun, you'll know exactly where in your yard it has the best chance to thrive. This simple exercise prevents one of the most common gardening heartbreaks: putting the right plant in the wrong place. Next, let's talk about the bigger picture: your climate. The United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA, has created an invaluable tool for every American gardener: the Plant Hardiness Zone map. This map divides the country into numbered zones based on the average annual minimum winter temperature. It essentially tells you which perennial plants are likely to survive the winter in your specific location. You can easily find your zone by visiting the USDA website and entering your zip code. For example, a gardener in Miami, Florida might be in Zone 11A, while someone in Minneapolis, Minnesota could be in Zone 4B. This is critical information. It means the beautiful tropical hibiscus that thrives year-round in Miami will not survive a Minneapolis winter outdoors. Knowing your zone number prevents you from investing time and money in plants that are not suited for your climate's extremes. But the USDA zone is just the starting point. Within your yard, you have what are called microclimates. These are small pockets where the conditions are slightly different from the surrounding area. For instance, the area right next to a south-facing brick wall will absorb and radiate heat, making it a few degrees warmer. This might be the perfect spot to try a plant that's rated for one zone warmer than yours. Conversely, a low-lying spot at the bottom of a hill where cold air settles might be a frost pocket, making it colder than the rest of your yard. The area under a large evergreen tree might be more sheltered from wind and snow. Start looking for these microclimates. Feel the warmth coming off a stone patio in the evening. Notice which part of your yard the snow melts from first in the spring. Pay attention to that corner where the wind always seems to whip around the house. By identifying and understanding these microclimates, you can push the boundaries of your official hardiness zone and create specialized environments for a wider variety of plants. Now, let's get our hands dirty and talk about soil. Soil is not just dirt, it's the soul of your garden. It's a complex mixture of minerals, organic matter, water, and air, and its composition determines how well your plants can access nutrients and water. The 3 primary mineral particles in soil are sand, silt, and clay. You can perform a simple feel test to get a basic idea of your soil type. Grab a small handful of moist soil, but not soaking wet. Squeeze it in your hand. Sandy soil feels gritty and will fall apart easily. It drains very quickly, which means it doesn't hold onto water or nutrients for long. Clay soil feels sticky and can be rolled into a ball or even a ribbon. It holds water very well, sometimes too well, which can lead to root rot. Siltous soil is the intermediate. It feels smooth, almost like flour, when dry, and has a slightly slippery feel when wet. Most gardens have a combination of these three, and the ideal is a balanced mix called loam, which has good drainage and nutrient retention. Beyond texture, you should also consider soil pH, which is the measure of its acidity or alkalinity. Most plants prefer a relatively neutral pH, around 6.5 to 7.0. However, some plants, like blueberries and azaleas, are acid lovers and need a lower pH to thrive. You can buy a simple, inexpensive soil test kit from any garden center to get a reading of your soil's pH. For now, just getting a baseline understanding of your soil's texture and pH is a massive step forward. In a later chapter, we'll dive deep into how to amend and improve your soil, no matter what type you're starting with. Finally, let's talk about water. Observe how water behaves in your yard. After a heavy rain, where do the puddles form? Those are your low spots with poor drainage. Where does the water run off immediately? Those are your high spots or slopes. This is crucial information. Planting a drought-tolerant lavender in a spot that stays soggy for days is a recipe for disaster. Likewise, a moisture-loving plant like a fern will struggle on a dry, sloped bit of ground without constant watering. Understanding your garden's natural topography and drainage will help you work with nature, not against it, saving you water and effort in the long run. So, to recap our first chapter, we've learned the importance of becoming a garden detective. Your homework is to create a sun map, identify your USDA hardiness zone, start looking for microclimates, get a feel for your soil's texture, and observe the flow of water across your landscape. This might seem like a lot of observation and not much action, but this groundwork is the foundation upon which every successful garden is built. By taking the time to understand your unique environment, you're setting yourself up for a season of success, with healthier plants and fewer frustrations. Thank you for joining me. In our next chapter, we'll use this newfound knowledge to tackle one of the most exciting steps, choosing the right plants for your specific garden. Welcome back to our journey in creating a thriving American garden. In our last chapter, we put on our detective hats and did the crucial groundwork of understanding our unique garden ecosystem. You learned how to map your sunlight, identify your USDA hardiness zone and microclimates, get a basic feel for your soil type, and observe how water moves across your land. Now comes the exciting part, using that vital information to choose your plants. This brings us to the single most important mantra in all of gardening, a phrase you will hear time and time again because it is the absolute key to success: right plant, right place. It's a simple philosophy that means choosing plants that will naturally thrive in the conditions you already have, rather than trying to force a plant to survive in a place it's not suited for. Fighting your environment is exhausting, expensive, and often leads to disappointment. Working with your environment leads to a garden that is healthier, more resilient, and requires far less maintenance. Today, we're going to learn how to put this philosophy into practice. Your first tool in this process is something you've probably seen 100 times: the plant tag. That little plastic stake tucked into the pot of every plant at the nursery is not just a price tag, it's an instruction manual. Learning to decipher it is a gardening superpower. Let's break down the key information you'll find there. First, and most importantly, you'll see the sun requirement. Remember that sun map you made? This is where it becomes your best friend. The tag will say full sun, part shade, or full shade. Full sun generally means 6 or more hours of direct, unfiltered sunlight per day. Part sun or part shade usually means 4 to 6 hours, preferably the gentler morning sun. Full shade means less than 4 hours of direct sun. By matching the tag's requirement to a location on your sun map, you've already won half the battle. Next, look for the USDA hardiness zone. The tag will list a range, for example, zones 4 to 8. If you live in zone 6, this plant is a perfect perennial for you. If you live in zone 3, it won't survive your winter. If you live in zone 9, it may not get the winter chill it needs to flourish. Match the plant zone rating with your own to ensure it's a long-term resident, not a temporary guest. Then, pay close attention to the plant's mature size. This is one of the most common mistakes new gardeners make. You buy a cute 1-gallon shrub, plant it 2 feet from your house, and in 5 years, it's a 10-foot monster blocking your windows and scraping your siding. The tag will tell you the plant's estimated mature height and spread, or width. Always plan for the mature size. Use a tape measure in your garden bed to visualize just how much space that little plant will eventually command. This prevents overcrowding, which leads to poor air circulation and increased risk of disease. Finally, the tag will give you information on water needs. You'll see terms like drought tolerant, requires average water, or prefers consistently moist soil. Now, think back to your observations from Chapter 1. That spot where water drains away quickly on a slight slope? That's a great candidate for a drought-tolerant plant like a sedum or a coneflower. That low-lying area that stays damp after a rain? That's where a moisture-loving plant, like a cardinal flower or an iris, will be happiest. Now that you can read a plant tag, let's discuss the different types of plants based on their life cycles. Primarily, you'll be working with annuals and perennials. Annuals are plants that complete their entire life cycle, from seed to flower to seed again, in a single growing season. Think of marigolds, zinnias, petunias, and impatiens. They are fantastic for providing instant, vibrant, season-long color. They are the sprinters of the garden world. The downside is that they die with the first hard frost, and you have to purchase and plant them again every year. They're perfect for filling in gaps in your garden beds, and they are the go-to choice for pots and hanging baskets. Perennials, on the other hand, are the marathon runners. These are plants that live for 3 or more years. Their foliage and flowers may die back to the ground in the winter, but their root system survives, and they re-emerge every spring. Examples include hostas, daylilies, peonies, and black-eyed Susans. Perennials form the backbone, or the bones, of a garden. While they can be more expensive up front, they are a long-term investment. Most perennials have a more specific and often shorter bloom time than annuals, so it's wise to choose a variety of them that bloom at different times, some in spring, some in summer, and some in fall, to ensure continuous interest in your garden. A well-designed garden often uses a smart combination of both, a strong structure of perennials for lasting beauty, with colorful annuals tucked in for non-stop summer drama. There's a third, smaller category called biennials, like foxgloves and hollyhocks, which have a 2-year life cycle, but for most beginners, focusing on annuals and perennials is the best way to start. Finally, I want to introduce you to your garden's ultimate secret weapon, native plants. Native plants are species that have grown and evolved in your specific region for thousands of years, without any human intervention. This means they are perfectly, exquisitely adapted to your local climate, your soil, and your typical rainfall patterns. Why should you choose native plants? The benefits are enormous. First, they are incredibly low maintenance. Once they are established, they rarely require supplemental watering or fertilizer because they are designed to thrive on what your environment naturally provides. Second, they are critical for supporting local wildlife. Native plants and native insects, birds, and pollinators have co-evolved. They depend on each other. Planting a native oak tree, for example, can support hundreds of species of caterpillars, which in turn become essential food for nesting birds. By planting natives, you're not just creating a beautiful space, you're restoring a piece of a vital ecosystem. Finding plants native to your specific area is easier than ever. Websites like the National Wildlife Federation's Native Plant Finder or the Audubon Society's database allow you to enter your zip code and get a customized list of plants that will thrive in your yard and support local wildlife. Choosing even a few native plants is one of the most impactful things you can do as a gardener. So, let's put it all together. You're heading to the garden center. You have your sun map in mind. You know your hardiness zone. You have a list of potential spots and their soil and water conditions. Now you can walk the aisles with confidence. You can read a plant tag and know immediately if that plant is a good candidate. You can decide if you're looking for the instant gratification of an annual or the long-term structure of a perennial. And you can actively look for native species that will not only beautify your space, but also bring it to life. You are no longer just a buyer. You are a matchmaker, thoughtfully pairing the perfect plant with its perfect place in your garden. That's all for this chapter. In our next session, we'll get practical and physical. We'll discuss the essential tools every gardener needs and walk through the step-by-step process of preparing your garden beds for planting. Hello and welcome back. In our first 2 chapters, we did the essential headwork of gardening. We learned to understand our environment, and we embraced the right plant, right place philosophy to make smart choices. Today, we transition from thinking to doing. This is the chapter where we get practical and physical. We're going to cover 2 fundamental topics: assembling your essential gardener's toolkit, and the step-by-step process of preparing a brand new garden bed from scratch. This preparation phase is where you lay the literal foundation for a healthy, vibrant garden. Let's start with your tools. Walking into a garden center can be overwhelming, with walls of shiny, specialized gadgets. But the truth is, you don't need one of everything. A few high-quality, essential tools will serve you far better than a shed full of cheap ones that will bend or break. Think of this as investing in your success. We can break down the essentials into a few categories. First, let's talk about hand tools, for the up-close and personal work. The most iconic of these is the hand trowel. This is your go-to for digging small holes for planting annuals, perennials, and vegetable starts. Look for one with a comfortable grip and a sturdy connection between the handle and the blade. preferably made of stainless steel so it won't rust. Next is a hand fork, sometimes called a cultivator. With its 3 or 4 strong tines, it's perfect for breaking up compacted soil in small areas, weeding in tight quarters, and mixing in soil amendments like compost around individual plants. You will absolutely need a good pair of pruners, also known as secateurs. These are for trimming branches, deadheading spent flowers, and harvesting herbs and vegetables. I strongly recommend bypass pruners, where 2 curved blades pass each other like scissors. They make a clean, healthy cut on living stems. The other type, anvil pruners, have a single blade that closes onto a flat surface, which can crush living tissue and is best reserved for dead wood. A quality pair of bypass pruners will be one of your most used tools. And please, do not underestimate the importance of a good pair of gardening gloves. They don't just keep your hands clean, they protect you from blisters, thorns, splinters, and bacteria in the soil. Having a durable, water-resistant pair is non-negotiable for garden health and safety. Now for the long-handled tools that provide leverage and save your back. You'll need a good shovel or a spade. A shovel typically has a pointed tip and a scooped blade, making it ideal for digging holes and moving loose material like mulch or compost. A spade has a flatter, squared-off blade, which is excellent for creating clean, sharp edges on your garden beds and for slicing through turf. If you're only buying one to start, a pointed shovel is slightly more versatile. I also highly recommend a garden fork, which looks like a sturdy pitchfork. Its strong tines are often much more effective than a shovel for breaking up heavy, compacted clay soil. It's also the perfect tool for turning compost and for lifting and dividing perennial plants without severely damaging their root systems. You'll also need a good rake. We're not talking about a flimsy leaf rake here, but a hard garden rake with rigid steel tines. This tool is essential for leveling soil in a new bed, breaking up clumps of dirt, and spreading mulch or compost evenly. Finally, think about how you'll water your garden. A simple watering can is perfect for tending to container plants and for gently watering newly planted seeds and seedlings. For the larger garden area, you'll want a quality garden hose that is long enough to reach all corners of your yard and, importantly, is kink-resistant. Pair that hose with an adjustable spray nozzle or a watering wand that offers a range of patterns, from a fine mist to a gentle shower. With just those core tools, a trowel, a hand fork, pruners, gloves, a shovel, a garden fork, a hard rake, and proper watering equipment, you can accomplish about 90% of all gardening tasks. Now that you're geared up, let's create our canvas. We're going to walk through the process of turning a patch of lawn into a beautiful, plant-ready garden bed. Step 1 is to define your space. Before you dig, lay out the shape of your new bed. A simple garden hose or a long rope is a great way to experiment with different curves and shapes until you find one you like. Once you're happy with the design, you can mark the outline with spray paint or by tracing it with the edge of your spade. My advice to beginners is always to start smaller than you think. You can always expand the bed next year. Step 2 is removing the existing grass and weeds. The quickest method is to physically dig it out. You can use a spade to slice the turf, or sod, into manageable sections, then slide the spade underneath to cut the roots and lift it out. This method gives you an instant, ready-to-work bed. The downside is that it's very labor-intensive and you're removing a layer of valuable topsoil along with the grass. A second, less strenuous and more soil-friendly method is called smothering, or sheet mulching. You simply mow the grass as short as possible, then cover the entire area with overlapping layers of cardboard or a thick stack of newspaper. This layer blocks all sunlight, causing the grass and weeds underneath to die and decompose. On top of this light-blocking layer, you can pile organic matter like compost, shredded leaves, and grass clippings. Over several months, this all breaks down into rich, wonderful soil. The advantage is that it's far less work and builds incredible soil health. The disadvantage is that it takes time, often 3 to 6 months or more, so it requires planning ahead. Step 3, assuming you've dug out the sod, is to loosen the soil. The ground beneath the grass is likely very compacted. Use your garden fork or shovel to dig down about 8 to 12 inches and turn the soil over. Your goal is to break up the compaction, which allows air, water, and most importantly, plant roots to penetrate deep into the ground. Step 4 is the most critical: amend the soil. No matter what kind of soil you have, it can be improved. This is where your soil assessment from Chapter 1 comes into play. If your soil is heavy clay, you'll want to mix in organic matter like compost to improve drainage and structure. If your soil is very sandy, that same compost will help it retain moisture and nutrients. In fact, compost is the universal soil improver. It is the single best thing you can add to your garden. Plan on spreading a generous 2 to 4 inch layer of quality compost over your entire new bed. Then, use your fork or shovel to gently mix it into the top 6 to 8 inches of your loosened soil. Step 5 is to finish and level. Use your hard rake to smooth the surface of the bed, breaking up any large clumps and creating a fine, even texture. Your new garden bed is now a perfectly prepared canvas, ready and waiting for its new plants. The work you do here, before a single plant goes in the ground, will pay you back tenfold over the entire life of your garden. That's a wrap for today. You now know what tools you need and how to build a garden bed from the ground up. In our next chapter, we will finally get to the main event, learning the proper techniques for planting, spacing, and getting your new plants settled into their wonderful new home. Hello and welcome back to our guide for American gardeners. So far, we have covered the critical planning stages. You've become an expert on your own backyard, you've learned how to select the perfect plants, and you've put in the hard work to prepare a beautiful garden bed. Today is the day it all comes together. This is the moment we've been building towards, the act of planting. Putting a plant in the ground might seem simple, but the technique you use can make the difference between a plant that struggles and one that thrives. A little care and attention to detail at this stage sets your plant up for a long, healthy life. Our goal today is to minimize something called transplant shock, the stress a plant experiences when it's moved to a new environment. By following a few key steps, we can make this transition as smooth as possible. Before you even dig your first hole, there are 2 preparatory steps. First, give your new plants a thorough drink of water while they are still in their pots. Let them sit for about an hour before you plan to plant them. A well-hydrated plant is much more resilient and better equipped to handle the stress of being moved. A dry, stressed plant is starting at a disadvantage. Second, arrange your plants on top of your prepared bed according to your design. This is your chance to be the artist. Move them around, see how they look together, and most importantly, consider their mature size, which we discussed in Chapter 2. This step allows you to perfect the spacing and composition without committing to a single shovel of dirt. Once you're happy with the arrangement, you're ready to start planting. Now, let's get into the step-by-step process of planting. Step 1 is to dig the right hole. The golden rule of planting is to dig a hole that is twice as wide as the pot the plant came in, but only as deep as the root ball. It's tempting to dig a very deep hole, but this is a mistake. A hole that's too deep can cause the plant to settle and become buried, which can lead to crown rot at the base of the stem. The width is what's important. Digging a wide hole loosens the surrounding soil, making it easy for the new roots to expand outward into their new home. Step 2 is to gently remove the plant from its container. Please, resist the urge to grab the plant by its main stem and yank it out. This can damage the stem and the delicate roots. Instead, place one hand over the top of the pot, with the plant stem between your fingers, and turn the pot upside down. With your other hand, give the bottom of the pot a firm tap. The entire plant and its root ball should slide out gently into your hand. Step 3 is one of the most important professional secrets. Inspect and loosen the roots. Plants that have been in their pots for a while can become root-bound, meaning their roots have hit the edge of the pot and have started to circle around the bottom, creating a dense, tangled mat. If you plant it like this, the roots may continue to grow in that circular pattern instead of spreading out into the new soil. To prevent this, you need to gently break up that pattern. Use your fingers to tease the bottom roots apart. If the root ball is very dense and tangled, don't be afraid to take a clean knife or your pruners and make 3 or 4 shallow, vertical cuts down the sides of the root ball. This might feel destructive, but it's incredibly beneficial, as it encourages new root growth outward. Step 4 is to place the plant in the hole. This is your chance to check the depth one last time. The top of the root ball should sit perfectly level with, or even a tiny bit higher than, the surrounding soil in your garden bed. A great way to check this is to lay the handle of your trowel or shovel across the top of the hole. The top of the root ball should just touch the handle. Step 5 is to backfill the hole. Use the native soil that you originally dug out of the hole to fill in the space around the root ball. There's no need to add a lot of fertilizer or rich amendments directly into the planting hole, as this can sometimes burn the tender new roots. As you add the soil, gently firm it in with your hands. The goal is to eliminate any large air pockets, not to compact the soil. Avoid stomping on the soil with your feet. Once the plant is in the ground, your job isn't quite done. The immediate post-planting care is critical. The most important thing you can do right after planting is to water deeply and thoroughly. Give each new plant a long, slow soak. You want the water to penetrate deep into the soil, settling it around the roots and providing a reservoir of moisture. This is not a quick sprinkle, this is a foundational watering. Let your hose run on a slow trickle at the base of each plant for several minutes. Next, we introduce a gardener's best friend, mulch. Mulch is simply a layer of material applied to the surface of the soil. Organic mulches like shredded hardwood bark, wood chips, pine straw, or even shredded leaves are fantastic choices. Applying a 2 to 3 inch layer of mulch around your new plants will do several amazing things. It will dramatically slow down water evaporation from the soil, meaning you'll have to water less often. It will keep the soil temperature more consistent, protecting roots from extreme heat and cold. It suppresses weed growth. And, as it slowly decomposes, it will enrich your soil over time. When you apply mulch, be sure to leave a small 1 to 2 inch gap right around the base of the plant stem. Think of it as creating a little donut, not a volcano. Piling mulch directly against the stem can trap moisture and lead to rot and disease. For the first few weeks, your new plants are like patients in recovery. Keep a close eye on them. Check the soil moisture every couple of days by sticking your finger about 2 inches down. If it feels dry, it's time to water again. A little bit of wilting in the heat of the afternoon can be normal as the plant adjusts, but if it looks wilted in the morning, it's a clear sign it needs a good, deep drink. Congratulations! You have now successfully prepared, planted, and protected your new garden additions. You've given them everything they need for a fantastic start. In our next chapter, we will take a deeper dive into the most essential ongoing task in any garden, watering. We'll explore the art and science of how, when, and how much to water to ensure your entire garden remains lush and healthy. Hello and welcome back. In our last chapter, we experienced the joy of finally getting our plants in the ground, setting them up for a lifetime of success. Now, we turn our attention to the single most vital, ongoing task in any garden, providing water. Water is the lifeblood of your plants. It's essential for photosynthesis, for transporting nutrients from the soil to the leaves, and for maintaining the structural integrity of every cell. But effective watering is more than just pointing a hose at your plants whenever they look thirsty. It's a science and an art. Watering incorrectly can be just as harmful as not watering at all. It can waste a precious resource, promote disease, and create weak, dependent plants. Today, we're going to learn how to water intelligently, so you can grow a garden that is lush, healthy, and resilient. To make it easy to remember, let's focus on the 3 golden rules of watering. Golden rule number 1 is, water deeply, not daily. This is, without a doubt, the most important concept to understand. It's very tempting to give your garden a light sprinkle every single day. It feels like you're taking good care of it. But this practice is actually counterproductive. A light, shallow watering only wets the top inch or 2 of soil. This encourages your plants to develop a shallow, weak root system right near the surface. These shallow roots make the plant extremely vulnerable. On the first hot, dry day, the top layer of soil dries out, and your plant has no way to access the moisture deeper in the ground. Instead, you want to water deeply and infrequently. A long, slow soaking allows the water to penetrate 6, 8, or even 12 inches into the soil. This encourages your plants to grow deep, extensive root systems to chase that water. A deeply rooted plant is a strong, self-sufficient plant. It can withstand heat waves and short periods of drought because it has access to a much larger reservoir of moisture. So, how much is enough? The general rule of thumb for most established garden beds is about 1 inch of water per week, either from rainfall or from your hose. A simple way to measure this is to place an empty, clean tuna can in your garden before you start watering. When the can is full, you've delivered about 1 inch of water. The best way to know when to water, however, is not by a schedule, but by checking the soil itself. Just stick your finger 2 to 3 inches into the ground near your plants. If the soil feels dry at that depth, it's time to water. If it feels cool and moist, you can wait another day or 2. Golden rule number 2 is, water in the morning. The time of day you water has a huge impact on efficiency and plant health. The ideal time to water is in the early morning, between about 6 and 10 a.m. During these hours, the sun is less intense and the winds are calmer, which means less of your precious water is lost to evaporation. The water has time to soak deep into the soil and be absorbed by the roots before the heat of the day sets in. Watering in the evening is the second best option, but it comes with a risk. If the plant's leaves remain wet overnight in cool, still air, it creates the perfect breeding ground for fungal diseases like powdery mildew. The absolute worst time to water is in the middle of a hot, sunny afternoon. Evaporation is at its peak, and you can lose up to half the water you apply before it ever reaches the roots. And that brings us to golden rule number 3, water the soil, not the leaves. Remember, it's the roots that absorb water, not the foliage. Consistently wetting the leaves does very little to hydrate the plant and, as we just discussed, greatly increases the risk of disease. Your goal should always be to deliver water directly to the root zone at the base of the plant. So, how do we best accomplish this? Let's talk about some common watering tools and techniques. Hand watering with a hose and a watering wand is great for containers and for giving new plantings some extra attention. It gives you precise control, but it can be very time-consuming for a large garden. Overhead sprinklers are popular because they cover a large area with minimal effort. However, they are the least efficient method. They lose a lot of water to evaporation, and they wet the foliage indiscriminately. If you must use a sprinkler, be sure to do it very early in the morning to minimize these problems. A much better option is a soaker hose. This is a special porous hose that you snake through your garden beds. When you turn on the water, it slowly weeps or seeps water along its entire length, delivering it directly to the soil. Soaker hoses are very efficient and keep the plant foliage perfectly dry. The gold standard for water efficiency is drip irrigation. This is a system of tubes and small emitters that deliver water drop by drop to the base of each individual plant. It's the most effective way to get water exactly where it's needed with almost zero waste. While it has a higher initial setup cost and effort, a drip irrigation system can save you immense amounts of time and water in the long run. Finally, remember that watering is not one size fits all. You have to adapt your technique to your specific conditions. A garden in sandy soil will need to be watered more frequently than a garden in heavy clay soil, which holds moisture for much longer. New plants will need more consistent watering than established, drought-tolerant perennials. And a plant in a terracotta pot on a sunny patio might need water every single day in the summer, as containers dry out extremely fast. By following these principles, watering deeply, in the morning, and at the soil level, you'll build a stronger, more resilient garden and become a much more effective and water-wise gardener. That's all for today. Now that our garden is planted and properly watered, we have to deal with the inevitable challenges that arise. In our next chapter, we'll tackle two of the biggest ones: how to win the war on weeds and manage common garden pests. Hello, and welcome back to our comprehensive guide to gardening in the US. You've prepared your soil, chosen your plants, placed them in their new home, and learned how to water them effectively. Your garden is alive. But as you've surely noticed, your chosen plants aren't the only living things in your garden. Two inevitable challenges for every gardener, from the novice to the expert, are weeds and pests. Today, we're going to talk about how to manage these challenges effectively. I want to shift your mindset away from a war on nature, which implies harsh chemicals and constant battle. Instead, we'll adopt a smarter, more integrated approach. The goal is not to create a sterile, lifeless environment, but a balanced ecosystem where your plants can thrive with minimal, intelligent intervention from you. Let's start with the first challenge: weeds. A weed is simply any plant growing where it's not wanted. But they are more than just an eyesore. Weeds are fierce competitors. They fight with your beloved flowers and vegetables for three essential resources: water, sunlight, and soil nutrients. A garden choked with weeds will produce weaker plants with fewer flowers and a smaller harvest. The most effective way to deal with weeds is to stop them before they even start. Prevention is your #1 strategy. And the single best tool for weed prevention is something we've already discussed: mulch. That 2 to 3 inch layer of shredded bark, wood chips, or shredded leaves that you placed around your plants does more than just conserve moisture. It acts as a physical barrier, blocking sunlight from reaching the thousands of dormant weed seeds in your soil. Without light, most of them can never germinate. If you do only one thing for weed control, make it maintaining a healthy layer of mulch. Another great preventative strategy is to space your plants properly. By planting them close enough that their leaves will touch when they reach their mature size, you create a dense, living canopy. This canopy shades the soil, creating a natural, self-mulching system that suppresses weed growth. When weeds do appear, and they will, your approach will determine how much work is involved. The key is to tackle them with a little and often mindset. Spending 15 minutes weeding once a week is a pleasant, manageable task. Trying to reclaim a garden after a month of neglect is a back-breaking chore. The best time to pull weeds by hand is after a good rain or a deep watering. When the soil is moist, weeds slide out easily, root and all. If you try to pull a weed from dry, compacted soil, the top often breaks off, leaving the root in the ground to resprout and mock you later. For deep-rooted weeds like dandelions, a special tool called a dandelion weeder or a soil knife can help you get deep enough to remove the entire taproot. For clearing shallow-rooted weeds in larger, open areas, nothing beats a stirrup hoe, also called a hula or action hoe. You use it with a push-pull motion to slice the weeds off just below the soil surface. It's fast, effective, and very easy on your back. Now, let's turn our attention to pests. The first thing to remember is that not every bug is a bad bug. In fact, the vast majority of insects in your garden are either beneficial, like pollinators and predators, or completely harmless. Our goal is never to eliminate all insects, but to keep the damaging ones in check. This balanced approach starts with proper identification. Before you do anything, you need to know who the culprit is. Are the leaves on your beans getting chewed by a Japanese beetle, or are they being sucked dry by tiny aphids? A quick online search for "insect eating my rose leaves," for example, will help you identify the pest. Knowing your enemy is the first step. Once you've identified the pest, always start with the simplest, least toxic controls. For large pests like tomato hornworms or Japanese beetles, the most effective control is hand picking. Simply pick them off the plants and drop them into a bucket of soapy water. It's surprisingly effective. For smaller pests like aphids or spider mites, a strong blast of water from your hose can often be enough to dislodge them from the plant. The next level of defense is to make your garden a welcoming home for beneficial insects. These are the good guys, the natural predators that do the pest control for you. Ladybugs and their larvae are famous for devouring aphids. Lacewings, praying mantises, and even tiny predatory wasps are all your allies. You can attract these helpers by planting a diversity of flowers, especially those with small blossoms like dill, fennel, cilantro, and yarrow. Providing a shallow dish of water with some stones in it also gives them a place to drink. When you create a healthy habitat, the good bugs will come and help keep the pest populations in balance. If a pest problem gets out of hand and these methods aren't enough, you can turn to smarter, softer sprays. Avoid broad-spectrum chemical pesticides, which kill indiscriminately, wiping out your beneficial insects and pollinators along with the pests. Instead, look for targeted, organic options. Insecticidal soap is a great first choice. It's a special formulation that kills soft-bodied insects like aphids on contact, but has no residual effect, making it much safer for the good guys. Neem oil is another excellent option. It's a plant-based oil that disrupts the life cycle of many pests and also has fungicidal properties. Just be sure to apply these sprays in the late evening, when beneficial pollinators like bees are not active. By following this integrated approach, preventing weeds with mulch, managing the ones that appear early and often, and controlling pests by starting with the simplest, safest methods first, you become a proactive manager of your garden's ecosystem, not a reactive fighter of endless battles. That's our focus for today. In our next chapter, we're going to shift from defense to offense by exploring how to properly feed your garden. We'll demystify the world of fertilizers and soil amendments to ensure your plants have all the nutrition they need to grow strong and healthy. Hello and welcome back. We've planted, watered, and learned to defend our gardens from common challenges. Now it's time to shift our focus from maintenance to nourishment. Just like any living thing, plants need a steady supply of nutrients to grow strong, fight off diseases, and produce beautiful flowers and abundant harvests. Today, we are going to demystify the world of feeding your garden. We'll explore the difference between fertilizers and amendments and learn how to give our plants the nutrition they need to truly flourish. The most important philosophy to adopt is this: your primary goal is to feed the soil, not just the plant. Think of your garden's soil as a bank account for nutrients. You can make regular, small deposits to build a rich, fertile foundation that will sustain your plants for the long term. Or you can give your plants a payday loan, a fast-acting food that provides a quick boost but does nothing to build lasting health. A healthy, living soil, rich in organic matter and microbial life, is the absolute key to a successful, low-maintenance garden. To understand how to build this healthy soil, we first need to distinguish between two terms you'll often hear: soil amendments and fertilizers. A soil amendment is any material you add to your soil to improve its physical properties. Think of amendments as improving the pantry itself. The number one best amendment is compost. When you add compost, you improve the soil structure, its ability to hold water, and its drainage. You are building a better home for your plant's roots. A fertilizer, on the other hand, is a concentrated source of specific nutrients. Think of fertilizer as the meal, or a multivitamin. Its job is to deliver a direct dose of food to the plant. While some materials, like composted manure, can act as both, understanding this distinction is key. Amendments build long-term soil health, while fertilizers provide targeted, short-term nutrition. When you look at a bag or box of fertilizer, you will always see three numbers, such as October 10th 10 or 5-10-5. This is the NPK ratio, and it represents the three most important nutrients for plant growth. The numbers are always in the same order. The first number, N, stands for nitrogen. Nitrogen is all about lush, green, leafy growth. It's the fuel that powers the production of chlorophyll. A plant with plenty of nitrogen will have vibrant green leaves. The second number, P, stands for phosphorus. Phosphorus is crucial for strong root development and for promoting flowers and fruits. If you want abundant blooms on your roses or more tomatoes on your vines, phosphorus is the key nutrient. Think of P for production. The third number, K, stands for potassium. Potassium is the great regulator. It promotes overall plant vigor, helps plants use water efficiently, and strengthens their resistance to disease and stress. It's like the plant's immune system booster. So, a fertilizer labeled October 10th 10 is a balanced fertilizer, containing equal parts of these three macronutrients. A bloom booster fertilizer might have a ratio like 5-10-5, with less nitrogen for leaves and more phosphorus for flowers. Understanding this simple code allows you to choose the right food for your plant's needs. Next, you'll face the choice between organic and synthetic fertilizers. Synthetic fertilizers, like the common blue crystals you dissolve in water, are formulated in a lab. Their nutrients are immediately available to the plant, so you'll see very fast results. However, they are like junk food. They do nothing to improve the soil's long-term health, and if over-applied, their concentrated salts can easily burn plant roots. Organic fertilizers, on the other hand, are derived from natural sources like compost, animal manures, bone meal, or fish emulsion. Their nutrients are released slowly, as microorganisms in the soil break them down. This slow release process provides a steady, gentle feeding and is much less likely to burn your plants. More importantly, organic options feed the soil's microbial life, improving its structure and fertility over time. For the long-term health and sustainability of your garden, an organic approach is always the superior choice. So, how and when should you actually feed your plants? The golden rule is that it's always better to underfeed than to overfeed. For most established perennial and shrub beds, a simple top dressing of an inch of compost in the spring is often all the nutrition they need for the entire year. However, some plants are heavy feeders. This category includes most annual flowers and nearly all vegetables. They are working hard to grow, flower, and produce a harvest all in one short season. For these plants, it's a good idea to mix a balanced, slow-release organic fertilizer into the soil at planting time. Then, they may benefit from a supplemental feeding every 4 to 6 weeks during their peak growing period. Plants in containers are a special case. Nutrients are washed out of the pot with every watering. Because their root space and nutrient reservoir is so limited, container plants need to be fed regularly throughout the growing season, typically every 2 to 4 weeks with a diluted liquid fertilizer. When applying any kind of granular fertilizer, always water the soil before and after the application. This helps the nutrients dissolve and move down to the root zone, and it prevents the fertilizer from burning the plant's roots. And most importantly, always read and follow the directions on the product label. By making a habit of feeding your soil with compost and using targeted fertilizers only when needed, you create a garden that is not just surviving, but truly thriving. A well-nourished plant is not only more beautiful and productive, but it's also naturally more resilient to the challenges of pests and diseases. That's it for our lesson on nutrition. In our next chapter, we'll look at the essential mid-season tasks that keep your garden looking its best, including deadheading, pruning, and providing support for your growing plants. Hello and welcome back. We've reached the heart of the growing season. Your garden is established, plants are growing vigorously, and your space is hopefully filled with life and color. Gardening is a living, breathing process, an ongoing conversation with nature. Now that the foundation is laid, our role shifts to guiding, editing, and supporting our plants to help them reach their full potential. Today, we're going to focus on 3 essential hands-on tasks that define mid-season maintenance: deadheading, pruning, and providing physical support. These aren't complicated chores. Rather, they are satisfying activities that keep your garden looking tidy, feeling healthy, and performing at its absolute best. Let's start with one of the most rewarding tasks: deadheading. Simply put, deadheading is the practice of removing spent or faded flowers from a plant. To understand why this is so effective, you have to think like a plant. A plant's ultimate purpose in life is to reproduce, which means creating seeds. Once a flower has been pollinated and begins to fade, the plant diverts a tremendous amount of energy into developing that seed head. By snipping off that fading flower, we interrupt this process. We essentially trick the plant into thinking, "Oh no, my first attempt at creating seeds failed. I better try again." The plant then redirects all of that seed-making energy back into what we want, producing more flowers. The benefits are threefold. First and foremost, it promotes a longer and more abundant season of blooms on many annuals and perennials. Second, it instantly tidies up the appearance of your plants, keeping them looking fresh and vibrant. And third, for plants that tend to self-seed aggressively, deadheading prevents them from spreading all over your garden where you don't want them. The technique is simple. For plants with single flowers on a stem, like a zinnia or a cosmos, don't just snip the head off. Follow the flower stem down to the first set of full, healthy leaves, and make your cut right above that point. This hides the unattractive cut stem and encourages the plant to branch out from that junction. For plants that bloom on a spike, like a salvia or delphinium, you can wait until about 3/4 of the flowers on the stalk have faded, then cut the entire stalk off at the base of the plant. This will often encourage a whole new flower spike to emerge. Now, you don't deadhead everything. We often leave the seed heads on plants like coneflowers and black-eyed Susans in the fall, as they provide a vital food source for birds through the winter. And some plants, like peonies, only bloom once per season, so deadheading them is purely for cosmetic reasons. Next, let's talk about summer pruning. This is very different from the major structural pruning we do on dormant trees and shrubs in the late winter. Mid-season pruning is about light housekeeping and maintaining plant health. The easiest rule to remember is to prune the 3 Ds, anything that is dead, damaged, or diseased. You can and should remove this kind of growth at any time of year. Removing a broken branch or one that shows signs of fungal disease immediately helps the plant conserve energy and prevents the problem from spreading. Always make your cut back to a point of healthy, living tissue. Summer is also a great time to improve a plant's airflow. If you have a dense shrub, like a rose, or even a sprawling tomato plant, you can selectively remove a few branches from the center of the plant. This opens it up, allowing sunlight and air to penetrate deeper, which is one of the best ways to prevent common fungal diseases that thrive in damp, stagnant conditions. Finally, a technique called pinching back is used on certain fall-blooming perennials like chrysanthemums and asters. Earlier in the summer, you simply pinch off the top inch or two of growth. This forces the plant to send out side shoots, creating a much bushier, sturdier plant that will be absolutely covered in flowers come autumn, instead of a tall, lanky one that flops over. Our third topic is providing support, and the golden rule here is to do it early. It is infinitely easier to guide a young plant to grow up through a support than it is to try and wrestle a large, tangled, and overgrown plant into one later, which almost always results in broken stems and frustration. Different plants require different types of support. For tall, single-stemmed flowers like gladiolus or delphiniums, a simple bamboo stake is perfect. Push the stake into the ground a few inches from the plant stem, and loosely tie the stem to the stake using soft garden twine or strips of cloth. Use a figure-8 loop, with the string crossing between the plant and the stake, to prevent the tie from chafing the delicate stem. For clumping plants that tend to flop open from the center, like peonies or Shasta daisies, a grow-through grid or a peony ring is the ideal solution. You place these circular grids over the plant in the spring when it's just a few inches tall. The plant then simply grows up through the grid, which becomes completely hidden by the foliage, providing invisible support from within. Of course, for vining vegetables like indeterminate tomatoes, cages are a classic for a reason. They support the heavy weight of the fruit-laden branches. For other vining plants, like pole beans, cucumbers, or clematis, a trellis is essential. Growing vertically on a trellis not only supports the plant but also saves valuable garden space, improves air circulation, and keeps your fruits and flowers off the ground, away from pests and rot. These mid-season tasks, deadheading, pruning, and supporting, are the rhythm of the summer garden. They are your opportunity to interact with your plants, to guide their growth, and to help them be as healthy and productive as possible. That's all for today. So far, our focus has been primarily on the fundamentals of gardening that apply to all plants. In our next chapter, we're going to dive into one of the most rewarding aspects of this hobby, an introduction to vegetable gardening. Hello and welcome back to our journey through the garden. So far, we have focused on the foundational skills that create a healthy, beautiful landscape. We've nurtured our soil, supported our flowers, and managed the challenges of the growing season. Today, we delve into what is, for many, the most rewarding and delicious aspect of gardening: growing your own food. There is a unique and profound satisfaction that comes from walking out your door and harvesting a fresh, sun-warmed tomato or a handful of crisp lettuce for your dinner. The flavor is beyond anything you can buy in a store, and the connection it gives you to your food and to the seasons is truly special. If the idea of starting a vegetable garden seems intimidating, I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be. All of the principles we've already learned about soil, sun, water, and pests apply directly to the edible garden. The first and most non-negotiable rule of vegetable gardening is sunlight. While some ornamental plants are happy in the shade, the vast majority of vegetables are absolute sun worshippers. Most of the plants we grow for food are either producing a fruit, like a tomato or a pepper, or storing a large amount of energy in a root, like a carrot. This process requires a tremendous amount of solar power. For a successful vegetable garden, you need to find a spot in your yard that receives a minimum of 6, and ideally 8 or more, hours of direct, unfiltered sunlight per day. That sun map you made back in Chapter 1 is your most valuable tool here. There are a few exceptions. Leafy greens like lettuce, spinach, and kale can often get by with a bit less. But for the classic summer vegetables, sun is king. Once you've found your sunny spot, you need to decide on your garden style. There are 3 main options. The most traditional is a simple in-ground bed. This is where you prepare the soil in an existing patch of your yard, just as we discussed in Chapter 3. The primary advantage here is the low startup cost. The main challenges can be dealing with compacted native soil and potentially more weed pressure. A second, and hugely popular option, is the raised bed. A raised bed is essentially a large container without a bottom, often built from wood, stone, or metal, that you fill with a high-quality soil mix. The benefits are numerous. You get perfect soil and excellent drainage from day one, the soil warms up faster in the spring, and the beds are easier on your back and knees. The main downsides are the initial cost of the materials and the fact that they can dry out more quickly than in-ground beds during the heat of summer. The third option is container gardening. If you have a sunny patio, deck, or balcony, you can absolutely grow vegetables. Large pots, fabric grow bags, or window boxes can be perfect for growing things like tomatoes, peppers, herbs, and lettuce. The key is to choose a large enough container to accommodate the plant's root system and to remember that containers dry out very quickly and will require more frequent watering and feeding. When planning your layout, accessibility is paramount. A common beginner mistake is making a garden bed so wide that you can't reach the middle without stepping in it, which compacts the soil. A good rule of thumb is to make any bed no more than 4 feet wide if you can access it from both sides. Also, think about the sun's path. Plant your tallest crops, like corn or anything growing on a trellis, on the north side of your garden. This way, they won't cast a shadow over your shorter, sun-loving plants to the south. Now for the most exciting part, what should you grow? My advice for your first year is to focus on a small selection of easy-win vegetables. Success builds confidence. Let's create a beginner's all-star team. For the warm season, after all danger of frost has passed, you can't go wrong with bush beans. They grow quickly, are very productive, and generally have few pest problems. Zucchini and summer squash are famously easy to grow and incredibly prolific. Just 1 or 2 plants will likely produce more than your family can eat. For tomatoes, I recommend starting with a cherry tomato variety. They are far less prone to the diseases and problems that can plague the larger beefsteak types, and they'll give you a steady, sweet harvest all summer long. Peppers, both sweet bell peppers and hot varieties, are also excellent, reliable producers that grow in similar conditions to tomatoes. For the cooler weather of early spring and fall, leafy greens are your best friend. Leaf lettuce, in particular, is a fantastic beginner crop. Choose a cut-and-come-again variety, where you can harvest the outer leaves, and the plant will continue to produce new ones from the center. Radishes are the ultimate instant gratification crop, going from seed to harvest in as little as 3 to 4 weeks. And snap peas, grown on a small trellis, are a true delight, with a sweet crunch that rarely makes it from the garden into the kitchen. Starting your first vegetable garden is an adventure. Start small, choose a few of these reliable plants, and focus on enjoying the process. The taste of your first homegrown harvest will be your greatest reward and all the motivation you need for seasons to come. In our next chapter, we will unlock one of the most magical and cost-effective skills in all of gardening, the art of starting plants from seed. Hello and welcome back. Today, we are going to explore what is perhaps the most magical and fundamental act in all of gardening, starting a plant from a seed. Inside every tiny dormant seed is the complete genetic blueprint for a magnificent flower, a towering sunflower, or a vine loaded with delicious tomatoes. Unlocking that potential with your own 2 hands is an incredibly rewarding experience that connects you to the very core of the life cycle. Beyond the magic, there are practical reasons to start your own seeds. First is variety. The selection of starter plants at a nursery is just a tiny fraction of what's available to you as a seed. You can grow unique heirloom vegetables, rare flowers in specific colors, and varieties perfectly suited to your climate. Second is cost. A single packet of seeds, which might contain dozens or even hundreds of potential plants, often costs less than 1 single starter plant. And finally, starting your own seeds gives you complete control over the timing and health of your plants from day one. There are 2 main methods for starting seeds, and the one you choose depends on the type of plant. Let's break them down. The first and simplest method is called direct sowing. This is exactly what it sounds like. You plant the seeds directly into the garden soil where they are meant to grow. Many plants prefer this method, either because they grow so quickly that a head start isn't necessary, or because they have a sensitive taproot that doesn't like to be disturbed by transplanting. The best candidates for direct sowing are most root vegetables, like carrots, beets, and radishes. It also works perfectly for fast-growing crops like beans, peas, cucumbers, and squash. Many annual flowers, such as zinnias, cosmos, and sunflowers, also do beautifully when sown directly into warm garden soil. The process is straightforward. First, prepare your garden bed by making sure the soil is loose and raked to a fine, crumbly texture. Next, and this is the most important part, read the seed packet. It will tell you the 2 most critical pieces of information: how deep to plant the seed and how far apart to space them. A good rule of thumb is to plant a seed to a depth of about 2 to 3 times its diameter. After planting, water the area gently but thoroughly, and make sure to keep the soil consistently moist, not soggy, until the seeds germinate. One crucial step after your direct sown seeds have sprouted is thinning. Your seed packet might say to thin seedlings to 6 inches apart. This can feel ruthless, but it's essential. Leaving all the seedlings to grow results in a crowded, tangled mess where no single plant gets enough light, water, or nutrients to thrive. To thin, simply choose the strongest looking seedling in a clump and snip the others off at the soil line with a small pair of scissors. The second method is starting seeds indoors. We do this for plants that are slow to mature and need a long growing season, especially in parts of the US with cold winters. By starting tomatoes or peppers indoors 6 to 8 weeks before our last frost date, we give them a critical head start. To start seeds indoors successfully, you need a few key things. First, you need containers. This can be special seed starting trays, peat pots, or even clean yogurt cups with drainage holes poked in the bottom. Second, you need a proper growing medium. Do not use soil from your garden. It's too heavy, it compacts easily, and it can contain diseases that will kill your delicate seedlings. You must use a sterile, lightweight, soilless mix specifically labeled for seed starting. The third and most critical ingredient for indoor success is light. A sunny windowsill is almost never enough. It will produce pale, weak, and leggy seedlings that stretch desperately for the light. To grow strong, stocky transplants, you need to provide a dedicated light source. A simple, inexpensive fluorescent shop light or an LED grow light is perfect. You must hang the light so it is just 2 to 3 inches above the tops of your seedlings, and it needs to be on for 14 to 16 hours every day. The process is simple. Moisten your seed starting mix, fill your containers, plant your seeds to the recommended depth, and cover them with a plastic dome to keep humidity high. Once the first seeds sprout, remove the cover immediately and place them under your lights. Whether you've grown your seedlings indoors or purchased them, there is one final, non-negotiable step before they can be planted in the garden. This process is called hardening off. Your seedlings have been living a pampered life indoors. If you were to move them directly into the garden, the intense sun and wind would scorch and kill them in a single day. You must acclimate them gradually over a period of about a week to 10 days. Start by placing them outside in a protected, shady spot for just an hour or two. The next day, give them a little more time and perhaps a bit of gentle morning sun. Each day, gradually increase their exposure to the outdoor elements until, after a week or so, they are tough enough to be transplanted into their final home. Starting from seed is a skill that will open up an entire new dimension of gardening for you. It's a journey of patience and care that is rewarded tenfold. In our next chapter, we'll broaden our perspective and explore how to create a garden that has beauty and interest not just in one season, but all year round. Hello and welcome back. Up to this point, we've focused on the essential skills needed to make a garden grow. But a truly great garden does more than just grow. It captivates. It tells a story that unfolds throughout the entire year. Many gardens are designed to peak for a few glorious weeks in summer, only to be forgotten for the other 10 months. Today, we're going to broaden our perspective and learn how to create a garden with 4-season interest, a dynamic and ever-changing landscape that offers something beautiful to see every single day of the year. The key to a year-round garden is to think beyond just flowers. Flowers are a wonderful, but often fleeting, part of the show. To create lasting beauty, we need to consider 4 key elements: form, which is the shape of our plants; texture, from fine and feathery to bold and coarse; color, which comes from foliage, bark, and berries as well as blooms; and structure, the permanent framework or bones of the garden. Let's take a walk through the seasons to see how we can put these elements to work. We'll start with spring, the Great Awakening. This is the season of anticipation and fresh beginnings. The goal here is to layer in plants that signal the end of winter. This begins with fall-planted bulbs. There is nothing more hopeful than the first crocuses pushing up through the last of the snow, followed by the cheerful yellows of daffodils and the rich jewel tones of tulips. By planting a variety of bulbs that bloom at different times, you can create a continuous wave of color. Spring is also the time for early blooming perennials like the shade-loving Lenten rose, or hellebore, and the ground-hugging beauty of creeping phlox. And don't forget the big picture impact of flowering trees and shrubs like the brilliant yellow forsythia, the elegant magnolia, or the native redbud tree, which paint the entire landscape with color. As spring gives way to summer, the garden enters its peak of abundance. The challenge in summer isn't having color, but orchestrating it to last. A common mistake is to plant things that all bloom in June, leaving the garden looking tired by August. The solution is to layer your perennials based on their bloom times. You could have peonies and irises for early summer, followed by coneflowers, daylilies, and bee balm in midsummer, and finishing with phlox and black-eyed Susans in late summer. To bridge any gaps between these perennial shows, we use annuals. Annuals are the workhorses that provide non-stop, reliable color all season long. But even more important than flowers in the summer garden is foliage. Flowers come and go, but leaves are there from spring to fall. Choose plants with interesting foliage to create a constant tapestry of color and texture. Think of the bold architectural leaves of a hosta, the deep purples and bright limes of a coral bell, or the silvery gray foliage of a lavender or dusty miller. A garden designed with beautiful foliage will look lush and full even when nothing is in bloom. Next comes autumn, the garden's grand finale. This is the season of warm light, rich colors, and a graceful transition towards dormancy. Many gardens rely solely on the changing leaves of trees, but there is so much more to an autumn garden. You can plant fall-blooming perennials like asters and sedums, such as the classic autumn joy, which provide a final burst of color and are a critical late-season food source for pollinators. Of course, the foliage color of trees and shrubs is a star attraction. Beyond maples, consider shrubs like the burning bush for its fiery red leaves or the fothergilla for a stunning mix of orange, yellow, and red. As fall deepens, start thinking about the transition to winter. Instead of cutting everything back, leave the seed heads on your coneflowers, sedums, and especially your ornamental grasses. Their architectural shapes look beautiful when dusted with frost and provide essential food for birds. And consider plants that produce spectacular berries, like the native winterberry shrub, which drops its leaves to reveal branches covered in brilliant red berries. Finally, we arrive at winter, the season that many gardeners dread, but one that truly reveals the quality of your garden's design. When the flowers are gone and the leaves have fallen, the bones of the garden are exposed. This is where evergreen structure is paramount. A mix of broadleaf evergreens like rhododendrons and holly, and conifers like dwarf pines and junipers, provides the green architecture that gives the garden life and form against a gray or white landscape. Winter is also the time to appreciate the subtle beauty of bark. The brilliant red stems of a red-twig dogwood, the peeling, cinnamon-colored bark of a paperbark maple, or the creamy white of a river birch become stunning focal points. And those ornamental grasses you left standing will now catch the low winter light, swaying and rustling in the wind, adding movement and sound to the quiet garden. A truly well-designed garden is just as beautiful in the starkness of winter as it is in the abundance of summer. By intentionally selecting plants for what they offer in each of the 4 seasons, you can create a garden that is a constant source of discovery and delight, 365 days a year. In our next chapter, we'll take a closer look at one of the most vital plant groups for creating that year-round structure, the wonderful and diverse world of shrubs. Hello and welcome back. In our last chapter, we explored the art of creating a garden that offers beauty in all 4 seasons. Today, we're going to focus on the single most important type of plant for achieving that goal, the humble and hardworking shrub. If perennials and annuals are the colorful accessories of a garden, and trees are the ceiling, then shrubs are the walls and the furniture. They are the structural workhorses that define spaces, create privacy, and provide the essential backbone for your entire garden design. A shrub is generally defined as a woody plant that is smaller than a tree and has multiple stems branching out from the ground. They are the indispensable middle layer of the landscape, bridging the gap between your low-growing flowers and your tall trees. A garden without shrubs can often feel flat and incomplete. By learning to choose and use them effectively, you can elevate your garden from a simple flower bed to a rich, three-dimensional landscape. Shrubs fall into 2 main categories. The first is evergreen. Evergreen shrubs, as their name implies, retain their leaves or needles year-round. Think of plants like boxwood, holly, and rhododendrons. Their primary role in the garden is to provide permanent structure and color. They are the steady, reliable elements that look good even in the dead of winter, providing a green backdrop for the snow and forming the essential bones of your garden. The second category is deciduous. Deciduous shrubs are the ones that lose their leaves in the fall. While they may not provide winter structure in the same way, they are often the stars of the show when it comes to seasonal change. This group includes most of the spectacularly flowering shrubs, like lilacs and hydrangeas, and those with brilliant fall color, like fothergilla and many viburnums. A well-designed garden uses a thoughtful mix of both evergreen and deciduous shrubs to create a perfect balance of year-round structure and dynamic seasonal interest. Choosing the right shrub can feel overwhelming, but you can simplify the process by asking yourself 3 key questions before you ever set foot in the nursery. Question number 1 is, what are my conditions? This is our old friend, the right plant, right place philosophy. Does the spot you have in mind receive blistering full sun, or is it in cool, dappled shade? Is your soil sandy and dry, or is it heavy clay that stays wet? Be honest about your site, and then look for shrubs that will naturally thrive in those conditions. Question number 2, and this is arguably the most critical for shrubs, is, how big will it get? That cute little shrub in the 1-gallon pot may look perfect now, but the tag might say it will grow to be 8 feet tall and 10 feet wide. Ignoring the mature size is the number 1 mistake gardeners make with shrubs. It leads to plants that block windows, overwhelm walkways, and require constant, aggressive pruning. The secret is to choose a shrub that will naturally fit the space you have when it is fully grown. There are thousands of wonderful dwarf and compact varieties available today, so you can always find one that's the right scale for your garden. Question number 3 is, what job do I want this shrub to do? Think about function. Are you trying to create a hedge to screen your patio for privacy? Do you need a single, stunning specimen plant to act as a focal point? Are you looking for something to provide a burst of spring color, or something to attract birds and pollinators? Do you want brilliant fall foliage, or interesting winter berries? Defining the job you want the shrub to do will narrow down your choices significantly. To give you some ideas, let's talk about a few versatile and reliable shrubs that do well in a wide range of American gardens. Hydrangeas are incredibly popular for their spectacular summer flowers. There's a hydrangea for almost any situation. The classic big leaf hydrangeas for pink or blue blooms in part shade, the sun-loving panicle hydrangeas with their large, cone-shaped flowers, and the native oak leaf hydrangea, a 4-season all-star with beautiful flowers, great fall color, and peeling bark. 4 unforgettable spring fragrance. Nothing beats a classic lilac. 4 evergreen structure. Boxwoods are perfect for creating formal hedges and shapes. And for a truly multi-season performance, you can't go wrong with the viburnum family. Many viburnums offer fragrant spring flowers, beautiful berries for birds in the fall, and stunning autumn foliage color. When it comes to planting your new shrub, the rules we learned in Chapter 4 still apply. Dig the hole twice as wide as the pot, but only as deep. The most important thing you can do for a new shrub is to water it deeply and consistently during its first year in the ground. This is the crucial establishment period when it's growing the deep root system it needs to thrive for years to come. Once established, many shrubs are remarkably tough and low maintenance, proving their status as the true heroes of the garden. By adding a few well-chosen shrubs to your landscape, you are making a long-term investment in the beauty and structure of your garden, creating a richer, more engaging space for every season. In our next chapter, we'll look up to the top layer of the garden and discuss the majestic and vital role of trees. Hello and welcome back. In our journey so far, we have built our garden from the ground up. We've established the ground layer of flowers, and we've furnished our landscape with the structural middle layer of shrubs. Today, we look up. We are going to discuss the most significant and long-lasting plants you can add to your garden, the majestic and vital trees. Planting a tree is one of the most hopeful and forward-looking acts a person can do. It is a long-term investment, a legacy that will likely outlive you, providing shade, beauty, and shelter for generations to come. Trees are the anchors of a landscape. They provide the essential vertical dimension that makes a garden feel complete. They cool our homes in the summer, provide critical food and habitat for wildlife, improve air quality, and add significant value to our properties. Choosing and planting a tree is a major decision, but it is one of the most rewarding you will ever make as a gardener. When we talk about trees for a home garden, we can generally place them into 2 categories based on their size and function. First, there are the large shade trees. These are the classic, canopy-forming giants like oaks, maples, and sycamores. These trees are magnificent, but they require a significant amount of space to reach their full potential. They are best suited for larger properties where their extensive root systems and broad canopies won't interfere with homes, sidewalks, or power lines. For most modern suburban and urban yards, the more appropriate choice is an ornamental tree. Ornamental trees are smaller species, typically maturing at a height of under 30 feet. They are chosen specifically for their aesthetic qualities, such as a profusion of spring flowers, stunning fall color, interesting bark, or an elegant, sculptural form. These smaller trees are the perfect scale for adding height and structure to a garden without overwhelming it. Because planting a tree is such a permanent decision, the selection process deserves careful thought. Let's walk through the 5 golden rules of choosing the right tree. Rule number 1, and it is the most important: look up and look around. Before you fall in love with a tree at the nursery, stand in the spot you intend to plant it and visualize its mature size. How tall will it be? How wide will its canopy spread? Are there overhead power lines it will grow into? How close is it to your house's foundation, your driveway, or your property line? Don't plant a future problem. Choosing a tree that fits the space is paramount. Rule number 2 is to match the tree to your site. This is our right plant, right place principle applied on a grand scale. Does your soil stay wet, or is it dry and sandy? How much sun does the spot get? Some trees, like a river birch, can tolerate moist soil, while others will quickly fail in those conditions. Do your homework to ensure your chosen trees' needs match what your site can provide. Rule number 3 is to consider all 4 seasons. A truly great garden tree offers more than just a single feature. Look for trees that provide multi-season interest. Does it have beautiful spring flowers, dense summer shade, brilliant fall foliage, and an interesting branch structure or bark in the winter? The more seasons of interest a tree has, the harder it will work for you in your landscape. Rule number 4 is a practical one. Think about the mess. Are you okay with raking up a lot of fallen fruit or large seed pods? Some beautiful trees, like a female ginkgo tree or certain magnolias, can be quite messy. Be honest with yourself about your tolerance for this kind of maintenance. And rule number 5, go native when you can. Native trees are the absolute cornerstones of our local ecosystems. A native oak tree, for example, can support hundreds of species of caterpillars, which in turn are the primary food source for baby birds. By planting a native tree, you are creating a habitat and restoring a piece of the natural world in your own backyard. To give you a few ideas, some excellent ornamental trees for smaller spaces include the classic dogwood, with its beautiful spring blooms and elegant form, the native redbud, which covers its bare branches in stunning purple-pink flowers in very early spring, and the serviceberry, a true four-season all-star with spring flowers, edible summer berries for birds, fantastic fall color, and smooth gray bark. For larger properties, a mighty oak is an unparalleled gift to wildlife, while a maple is the undisputed champion of fall color. When it comes to planting, the technique is similar to shrubs, but the stakes are higher. Dig a wide, shallow hole, find the root flare, the point where the trunk widens to meet the roots, and ensure that flare is sitting at or slightly above the soil level. The most common mistake that leads to tree failure is planting it too deep. And please, avoid the volcano mulch. Piling a huge mound of mulch up against the trunk of a tree is a very common and harmful practice. It traps moisture against the bark, promoting rot and disease, and can cause roots to grow into the mulch instead of the soil. Instead, create a mulch donut, a wide, flat ring of mulch 3 to 4 inches deep that extends out to the tree's drip line, but does not touch the trunk. A new tree needs your help for the first few years. Water it deeply once or twice a week during dry periods to help it establish a deep and extensive root system. This initial care is a critical investment in your tree's long and healthy life. In our next chapter, we'll bring our focus back down to the ground level and discuss the living carpet of the garden, lawns and ground covers. Hello and welcome back. Over the course of this series, we have systematically built our garden from the top down. We've discussed the soaring canopy of trees, the structural middle layer of shrubs, and the vibrant beauty of flowers and perennials. Today, we bring our focus down to the foundational layer, the living carpet that ties the entire landscape together, the lawns and ground covers that make up the floor of our outdoor rooms. For many, the classic American lawn is an essential part of the home landscape. It provides a soft, cool surface for recreation and relaxation, a negative space that allows the eye to rest, and a traditional green frame for our garden beds. Maintaining a healthy lawn, however, can be a challenge. The key is to work with your climate and adopt a few simple, sustainable practices. First, it's critical to understand that there are 2 main categories of tuff grass in the United States, based on climate. In the northern half of the country, we grow cool season grasses. These include varieties like Kentucky bluegrass, tall fescue, and ryegrass. They thrive in the mild temperatures of spring and fall and may go dormant or struggle in the intense heat of summer. In the southern half of the country, from the Carolinas across to California, we grow warm season grasses. Varieties like Bermuda, zoysia, and St. Augustine grass love the summer heat but will go dormant and turn brown during the winter. Choosing a grass type that is suited to your region is the first and most important step to success. Once you have the right type of grass, you can create a healthier lawn with less work by following a few key principles. First, mow high. Many people are tempted to cut their grass very short, but this is counterproductive. Set your mower blade to one of its higher settings, around 3 to 4 inches. Taller grass develops deeper, more drought-resistant roots. The taller blades also shade the soil, keeping it cooler and preventing weed seeds from germinating. Second, water deeply and infrequently, just as we learned for our garden beds. A light, daily sprinkle encourages shallow roots. Instead, give your lawn a deep soaking of about 1 inch of water once a week. This encourages the roots to grow deep into the soil, creating a tougher, more self-sufficient lawn. Third, feed the soil, not just the grass. Instead of relying solely on synthetic fertilizers, consider top-dressing your lawn in the spring or fall with a thin, quarter-inch layer of high-quality compost. This feeds the microbial life in your soil, improves its structure, and provides a slow, steady release of natural nutrients. And when you mow, leave the clippings on the lawn. This practice, known as grass cycling, allows the clippings to decompose and return valuable nitrogen to the soil. It's a free, natural fertilizer. But what about those areas where grass simply refuses to grow? That deep, shady spot under a maple tree, that steep, difficult-to-mow slope, or that hot, dry strip of land along the driveway? For these problem areas, we turn to a wonderful and diverse group of plants known as ground covers. Ground covers are low-growing, spreading plants that form a dense mat of foliage over the soil. They are the ultimate problem solvers of the plant world. Once a ground cover is established, it can suppress weeds, control erosion on slopes, and provide a beautiful, textured carpet with far less maintenance than a traditional lawn. Let's look at a few reliable ground covers for different situations. For those challenging shady spots, a classic choice is Pachysandra, also known as Japanese spurge. It forms a lush, uniform carpet of glossy evergreen leaves. Another excellent shade lover is Vinca minor, or periwinkle, an incredibly tough, trailing plant with pretty blue or purple flowers in the spring. For hot, sunny, and dry areas, you need plants that are built to withstand tough conditions. Creeping thyme is a fantastic choice, especially for growing between stepping stones. It's very drought-tolerant, releases a wonderful fragrance when you walk on it, and is covered in tiny flowers in the summer. For the absolute hottest and driest spots, look to the many varieties of creeping sedum. These succulent plants are virtually indestructible and come in a range of foliage colors. For covering large, sunny slopes where you need erosion control, nothing beats a tough evergreen like creeping juniper, which provides year-round texture and requires almost no care once established. By looking at your landscape critically, you can begin to see where a lawn is the right choice for an open, high-traffic area, and where a beautiful, low-maintenance ground cover would be a smarter, more attractive solution. We have now covered all the essential components of a thriving garden, from the tallest trees to the lowest ground covers. In our final chapter, we'll bring all these elements together, discuss some basic principles of garden design, and talk about the most important part of this entire process: how to truly enjoy the beautiful space you've created. Hello, and welcome back for our final chapter. Over the course of this series, we have embarked on an incredible journey together. We started with the very soil beneath our feet, learning its secrets and how to improve it. We learned to think like a detective, mapping our sun and understanding our unique climate. We chose the right plants for the right places, and carefully settled them into their new homes. We've learned how to water, feed, and protect them, and how to guide their growth through the seasons. We've layered in the structure of shrubs and the majesty of trees. You have built a garden, piece by piece. In this final session, we're going to bring all those pieces together. We'll touch on a few simple design principles to help you arrange your garden with confidence, and then we will focus on what is, without a doubt, the most important part of this entire process: how to truly enjoy the beautiful, living sanctuary that you have created. Think of garden design not as a set of rigid rules, but as a few helpful guidelines to create a space that feels harmonious and pleasing. One of the most powerful principles is unity through repetition. This simply means repeating a certain element throughout your garden to make it feel cohesive. You could repeat a specific color, like a thread of sunny yellow that appears in your daffodils in spring, your daylilies in summer, and your goldenrod in the fall. Or you could repeat a plant, like a particular variety of ornamental grass, placing it in several different beds to tie the whole design together. This repetition gives the eye a sense of calm and order. Another key principle is to create a focal point. A focal point is a single, compelling element that captures your attention and anchors a view. It can be a beautiful specimen tree, like a Japanese maple with a sculptural form. It could be a piece of garden art, a bubbling fountain, or a classic bird bath. It could even be a single, stunning container overflowing with vibrant annuals placed at the end of a path. A well-placed focal point directs the eye and gives the entire garden composition a sense of purpose. Finally, think about how you move through the space. A gently curving path, whether it's made of stone, mulch, or simply mown grass, invites exploration. It creates a sense of journey and allows for the gradual reveal of different parts of the garden, making the space feel larger and more mysterious than if you could see everything all at once. With these simple ideas in mind, repetition, focal points, and flow, you can arrange the plants and elements we've discussed into a landscape that feels uniquely and beautifully your own. And that brings us to the true purpose of all this work. The real harvest of a garden isn't just the flowers or the vegetables. It's the joy, peace, and connection that it brings to our lives. I want you to give yourself permission to shift your mindset from gardener as worker to gardener as observer and enjoyer. First, embrace imperfection. Your garden is a living, breathing ecosystem, not a static object. There will be weeds. A leaf will get nibbled by a caterpillar. A plant you loved might not survive the winter. This is not failure, this is nature. The goal is not a flawless magazine cover, but a healthy, resilient space that brings you happiness. Gardening is a process, a journey, not a project with a finish line. Next, I encourage you to experience your garden with all 5 of your senses. Don't just look at the colors. Listen for the buzzing of bees and the songs of the birds you've invited in. Smell the rich, damp earth after a rain shower and the fragrance of a blooming rose or lilac. Feel the velvety texture of a lamb's ear leaf and the rough bark of a tree. And of course, taste the sharp sweetness of a fresh-picked raspberry or the bright zest of a mint leaf. And most importantly, create a place in your garden that is just for you. Add a comfortable chair to that shady spot under the tree. Put a small bench where it can catch the morning sun. Make a destination for yourself within the garden. Then, make a habit of going there, not with your trowel and your gloves, but with a cup of coffee or a good book, and simply be present in the space you've created. Watch the light change. Notice the small details. This is your sanctuary. Our time together in this series is coming to an end, but your adventure in gardening is just beginning. You now have the foundational knowledge and the skills to create a thriving garden. Stay curious. Visit botanical gardens for inspiration. Talk to other gardeners. Don't be afraid to experiment, to move a plant that isn't happy, or to try something new. You will have wonderful successes and you will have valuable failures, and both will make you a better gardener. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope you feel empowered and excited to get your hands in the dirt, to cultivate your own patch of earth, and to create a garden that will nourish your body, your spirit, and the world around you for many years to come. Happy gardening!